Good afternoon. I'm Bob Blancata, the National Coordinator of the Defeat Malnutrition Today Coalition. We'd like to welcome you to our webinar today, GAO Report Discussion, What's Next for Federal Senior Nutrition Programs. On December 23rd, the Government Accountability Office released a report that was entitled, what I just said, What's Next for Federal Senior Nutrition Programs. This came as a result of two things. A September 2017 letter from the Defeat Malnutrition Today Coalition to Senators Casey and Murray requesting them to ask the GAO to do this study, and then the formal request made by the senators to the GAO sent the same month. We will be hearing from the lead staff members for both senators involved in this project later in the webinar. At this point, on behalf of the Defeat Malnutrition Today Coalition and other key nutrition and aging groups, we commend the leadership of Senators Casey and Murray in getting this important report released. A more detailed summary of the report will come shortly in this webinar. Let me now turn the program over to Meredith Whitmire, the Policy Director for the Defeat Malnutrition Today Coalition, who can introduce today's participants in the webinar.
Great, thank you so much, Bob. So just wanted to start with Defeat Malnutrition Today, in case you are unfamiliar. We are a coalition of just now 100 national, state, and local stakeholders and organizations, including community groups, aging organizations, nutrition organizations, etc. And we share the goal of achieving the recognition of malnutrition as a sign of older adult health risk. And we are working to create policy change toward a greater emphasis on screening, detecting, preventing, and treating malnutrition. So our first speaker today is going to be Samantha Kohler with the U.S. Senate Special Committee on Aging. Samantha is a senior policy aide under Ranking Member Senator Bob Casey. Her current work focuses on the intersection of aging and health policy. Prior to joining the federal government, Samantha was a direct practice social worker. As a care manager for older adults, she focused on long-term care planning and access to health and social services. And Samantha has her master's in social work and master's in public health from the University of Michigan. And also just a note, Samantha will not have slides, so print in those questions. Samantha, please take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm just going to be very brief and talk a little bit about the work of the committee and really the work that's driving some of this interest in nutrition here on the Hill. And I'll do that right before Bob and Meredith provide a nice summary of the report and go over the findings. I wanted to highlight Senator Casey. So I work for Senator Bob Casey. He's the ranking member or the leading Democrat on the Senate Aging Committee. And I really wanted to highlight the Aging Committee's interest in senior nutrition and senior hunger broadly and the work that led up to the development of this report. So like I said, Senator Casey is the ranking member, the leading Democrat on the Aging Committee, but he's also a member of both the Senate Agriculture Committee and the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee. And importantly, these are the two committees that authorize or really oversee large bills that legislate over senior nutrition programs, like the Older Americans Act, which covers congregate and home delivered meals that are administered out of the Administration for Community Living, but also the Farm Bill, which covers programs administered by Food and Nutrition Services at the USDA. And so Senator Casey's work on these committees and really his leadership on the Aging Committee and in the aging space were kind of this natural lead-in to the work in senior nutrition and the work of the Aging Committee in senior nutrition. And this really blossomed in the summer of 2017, which feels like it was worlds away, but wasn't that long ago. The Aging Committee held a hearing to examine senior hunger and senior nutrition. And at that hearing, we heard from experts talking about the importance of nutrition and the adverse consequences of malnutrition for seniors. And we also had a Pennsylvanian come and testify about the importance of the Commodity Supplemental Food Program, what we like to affectionately call the Senior Food Box Program. And we just broadly learned about food insecurity, hunger, and malnutrition. And after that hearing, Senator Casey actually introduced a bipartisan bill to lengthen the recertification period of the Senior Food Box Program. And this decreased the administrative burden on states and local community organizations that administer the program, and really decrease the paperwork and hurdles that low-income eligible seniors face when trying to enroll in the program. And we were very fortunate through some hard work that this bill became law as part of the 2018 Farm Bill. And concurrently, as we were doing some of that work related to the Senior Food Box Program, which is actually administered by USDA and covered under the Farm Bill, not long after that hearing in the summer of 2017, as Bob mentioned, Senator Casey and Senator Murray received a letter from the Defeat Malnutrition Today Coalition around this request to the GAO about a study on senior nutrition. And we worked with GAO to develop a study that would examine federal nutrition assistance programs and address some of our gaps in knowledge of these programs. So we asked the GAO to look at how federal nutrition assistance programs address adult nutritional needs, the nutrition requirements of these programs, and how these programs are overseen at the state and federal level, and then also the challenges facing program providers and our local service providers who are actually on the ground administering these programs, working with seniors day in and day out. As you all probably know, the GAO, or the Government Accountability Office, they do some very rigorous work when they complete their studies, and they spend a significant amount of time designing these studies, doing some comprehensive literature reviews. They also do on-site visits. So you'll hear in the summary of the report that the GAO visited some states to learn about how these programs are administered on the ground and to talk about some of the barriers that they're facing to administer these programs. And for good or for bad, that takes quite a bit of time. So this report request went in at the end of 2017, and as Bob said, just last month, the final report came out. I won't spoil the results since you'll hear about them in a second. And before I turn it back over to Meredith, I do want to say that, you know, my boss, Senator Casey, represents Pennsylvania, and I know all of you on this call know this. All of our states are rapidly aging, as is Pennsylvania, and the 52 area agencies on aging in Pennsylvania don't just provide congregate and home delivered meals, but many of our area agencies on aging and our senior centers are often the pickup sites for senior food box programs. They help get our seniors enrolled in SNAP. They're handing out vouchers for senior farmers market. And I imagine, like many of you on this call, our aging network and our local service providers touch on senior nutrition and malnutrition really in every possible way. And we were really eagerly awaiting the release of this report and excited. I know that we'll be taking some questions at the end, and really excited to hear your thoughts for those of you on this call and suggestions of the areas of greatest need and the ways that you would like advocates as well as Congress to address some of those needs. So I'll turn it back over to Meredith, and I know she's going to lead into a summary of the report.
Great, thank you so much. Before we get into the substance of the report, I have a poll question for everyone. Did you read the GAO report? Very, very curious to know. Don't be shy, and these, we're not going to shame anybody, but just wondering.
Thank you, Samantha, for your comments and your work and your leadership. I will now begin the discussion about the report, and Meredith will also join me in a little while. So the background on the report, the work that was actually done by the GAO occurred between June 2018 and November of 2019. In their work, they studied programs in 4 states, Vermont, Arizona, Louisiana, and Michigan. They conducted interviews with 20 local service provider organizations and state aging agencies, and visited 25 meal and food distribution sites in the 4 states. And sometimes, the title can tell you a lot about a report, and I think the title in this case is one of those titles. Agencies could do more to help address the nutritional needs of older adults. And one main finding is current federal nutrition guidelines do not sufficiently focus on the nutrition needs of older adults, especially those with chronic conditions. And that's a very important point, since according to the Centers for Disease Control, 85% of older adults have at least one chronic health condition, and 62% have at least 2 chronic conditions. And I'll deviate for a second. I know that in the report that ACL had done by Mathematica about the nutrition programs, the numbers of people with chronic disease, 2 and 3 and 4 diseases was pretty common in among those who participate in the nutrition program. The guidelines do not address the varying nutrition needs of older adults of different ages, and instead focus on guidelines for broad age groups. The importance is that these guidelines impact the federal programs which provide nutrition to older adults. So you combine that with the less than robust oversight by the 2 federal agencies of the meals that are served, and the result that the GAO basically confirmed is that too many older adults are not receiving nutritious meals. And in the area of nutrition education, according to Health and Human Services regional officials, there are no requirements for the frequency or type of nutrition education that must be provided, though as officials in one region noted, programs are encouraged to provide education that is science-based. But almost half of state agencies surveyed in 2014 required area agencies on aging, either directly or through their local providers, to provide nutrition education at least quarterly, and about 25% of state agencies require it to be provided only semi-annually or annually. And that's an important piece because the law that governs the Older Americans Act nutrition program said it's supposed to do 3 things: provide a meal, provide nutrition education, and a socialization opportunity. So the education, especially today, is very important. State agencies overseeing the CSFP food package program must also establish a nutrition education plan and ensure that local providers provide nutrition education to program participants. In the area of nutrition screening, again, from the report, HHS congregate and home-delivered meals programs must screen for nutrition risk. But as the report points out, there is no federal policy or requirement on how assessments are conducted or their frequency, and states have the flexibility to determine their own process for assessing the nutritional needs of participants. HHS does provide a tool called the Determine Checklist that states may use for these assessments. But, what we found in the GAO report is really both a health issue for older adults and a fiscal issue for programs. The lack of proper nutrients in food can lead to older adults becoming victims of malnutrition. Estimates today show that 1 in 2 older adults are at risk of malnutrition. Malnutrition in its most severe form can lead to longer stays in hospitals and overall higher healthcare costs, including one estimate that was provided by HHS Secretary Azar that malnutrition results in some $42 billion in healthcare costs annually. And on the fiscal side, in the time of limited federal resources, programs that are not producing the outcomes that are expected can face future funding uncertainty. These are serious concerns that the GAO addressed in their report, and now Meredith will go to the next part.
Thanks. I wanted to answer one question that folks had. I think we covered this, but just making sure, there are a lot of acronyms. GAO does stand for Government Accountability Office. So that is the independent office that conducts investigations within the federal government, or in Congress. I also wanted to say that thank you for being honest for those of you who did not read the GAO report, and I hope that this is a helpful overview for you. So thank you. I wanted to talk about some of the challenges that the GAO found that nutrition programs have identified. Some programs say that they have trouble providing medically tailored meals. Some providers have said that they have trouble meeting the preferences of different cultures, religions, and a lot of providers also said that transportation, either to congregate sites or for drivers with home-delivered meal programs, is also a challenge. I think a lot of this has to do with funding issues, but we'll get into that. CACFP is the Child and Adult Care Food Program. It provides meals at adult day centers. And program providers in those programs also said that they have difficulty providing food that meets both federal requirements and the health needs of their specific participants. And the commodity supplemental food program faces some similar issues. So ultimately, these challenges relate to a growing issue that's currently being confronted by both Congress and the administration, addressing and responding to the social determinants of health. And that includes nutrition. Food is an important determiner of health. And so the report specifically calls on HHS and USDA, the Department of Agriculture, to improve oversight of meal programs and provide additional information to meal providers to help them meet some of the nutritional needs of older adults. So the GAO produced 5 specific recommendations. And to us, the recommendations do seem reasonable and probably able to be done without the need for any major new funding. And the GAO notes that both HHS and USDA generally agreed with these recommendations. 3 of them are directed at HHS, and the other 2 are directed at the USDA. And we are really pleased that, speaking on behalf of HHS, specifically for the Administration for Community Living, is ACL's Deputy Assistant Secretary for Aging, Edwin Walker. The USDA advised us that they could not provide us with a speaker for this webinar. So the recommendations for HHS, Edwin will definitely get into, but the recommendations include things like working with others in HHS to focus on the nutritional needs of older adults in the dietary guidelines for 2025 to 2030. I would note that the current dietary guidelines are in process. They're finishing up the dietary guidelines for 2020 to 2025. So I think GAO thought it was a little late for that. And the USDA is currently leading that process. So it'll be HHS's turn for the next round. ACL was also ACL was also, it was suggested that they should direct their regional offices to ensure that states are doing monitoring work in the nutrition content of meals provided under both the congregate and home delivered meals programs. So side note there, we're pretty interested to see if the recent reorganization of ACL's regional offices will impact their ability to implement this. That's probably a wait and see. And ACL was also told that it should centralize a location for information on meeting the nutrition needs of older adult program participants. So note there, we were also pleased to see that that involves the National Resource Center on Nutrition and Aging. USDA, it was recommended that there be better oversight of CACFP meals and snacks in the adult day settings by the USDA's Food and Nutrition Service, which is in charge of administering those programs. And that existing information that we already have on the nutrient needs of older adults should be better disseminated to these providers. So with that, I am going to turn this over to our wonderful official from the Administration for Community Living, Edwin Walker, who is the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Aging for the Administration on Aging within the Administration for Community Living. And in this capacity, he guides and promotes the development of home and community-based long-term care programs, policies, and services designed to afford older people and their caregivers the ability to age with dignity and independence, and to have a broad array of options available for an enhanced quality of life. Prior to joining the Administration on Aging, Edwin served as the director of the Missouri Division on Aging. He received a JD from the University of Missouri Columbia School of Law and a BA from Hampton University. So Edwin, please go ahead.
Well, thank you, Meredith, and thank you, Bob, and thanks to Samantha for being on the call. Thanks to Senator Casey for authorizing this work. It's my pleasure to have this opportunity to address the Defeat Malnutrition Today Coalition and to specifically address the recent GAO study, which is entitled Aging Agencies Could Do More to Help Address the Nutritional Needs of Older Adults. You know, we at the Administration for Community Living work regularly with GAO on a host of topics designed to improve programs for older adults. We look forward to continuing to work with them and members of Congress to make improvements like the ones that are recommended here. And while we appreciate the many reviews that we have, I think I should stress that rarely are the findings news to us. We are quite aware of the growing numbers of older people in the U.S. and throughout the world. And in addition, we've seen, and certainly those of you on the ground see firsthand, the tremendous demand for our services that are designed to enable older individuals to remain healthy and able to live in their own homes and community settings. Through the years, we've heard of the struggles of providers who have attempted to and who have been very innovative and creative, actually, in trying to meet the increasing demand, all the while seeing waiting lists increase. And while the GAO report references this demographic imperative and its consequences on local programs, it fails to adequately address the biggest issue that we hear the most about, which is inadequate funding to keep pace with the growing numbers and the growing need. You can flip to the next slide, Meredith. The combination of no hair and a gray beard tells you that I've been around Older Americans Act programs a long, long time. My sense of the evolution of the nutrition program is that while there probably has never been enough funding in the program to meet the needs, in the early days, there clearly was the ability to put out bids and choose the lowest and best proposal. That approach resulted in perhaps a higher quality and the possibility of serving a more diverse set of nutritional needs. But due to the increasing demand and fairly static funding that has not kept pace with basic inflation, not to mention the increasing number of older people and their nutritional needs, the bidding process principle of lowest and best has really been reduced to meaning lowest. Now, I've never met a provider who wanted to cut an individual who really needed a meal from the program. So in order to continue to meet the needs, the squeeze has resulted in contracting with the lowest cost providers and then seeing a reduction in quality and in variety aimed at meeting diverse nutritional needs. Further, the incentive of the Nutrition Services Incentive Program, or INSIP, is designed for providers to serve more and more meals with the hope of receiving a greater share of the INSIP funding. Again, in order to continue serving more meals when the cost of everything related to serving a meal, such as raw food costs, labor, transportation, and storage, continue to rise, has resulted in the only option to go with the lowest bid. Let's go to slide 3, or the next slide. We're going to talk about what GAO found, and as Meredith indicated, there were 3 recommendations that they made for HHS, and I'm going to speak to those, not the USDA ones. GAO found that nutrition can affect the health outcomes of older adults. And yes, we agree with that. Go to the next slide. Currently, they indicated that federal nutritional guidelines provide broad guidance for healthy populations, but do not focus on the varying nutritional needs of older adults. And yes, we are aware of that. Next slide. Most older adults have chronic conditions such as diabetes or heart disease and have different nutritional needs. Next slide. As older adults age, they may face barriers such as reduced appetite or things like that that could impair their ability to meet their nutritional needs. Next slide. So while GAO acknowledged that we in HHS plan to focus on older adults in a future update of the nutritional guidelines, which are always for 5-year periods of time. As Meredith explained, HHS's next turn will be 2025 to 2030, but because there's no documentation of our plan, they made a finding that such documentation is needed. Next slide. Now, this is despite the fact that we indicated to them that they should speak with the Office of Health Promotion and Disease Prevention in the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Health, which has lead responsibility within HHS for developing the next set of nutritional guidelines. As Meredith mentioned, the development of the guidelines rotates between USDA and HHS. They are responsible for the 2020 to 2025 set, and we will be responsible for the 2025 to 2030 set of guidelines. But GAO never spoke to the Office of Health Promotion and Disease Prevention to verify that we had already been in communication with them. And in fact, we are in constant communication with them and collaborate on a whole host of issues. In fact, some of you may have heard of the Healthy Aging Summits, 2 of which were held here in Washington as national summits. And now, over the next 2 years, they're being convened in the HHS regional offices in the HHS regions with the support of our regional administrators in an attempt to include state and local participants. In any event, since the release of the GAO report, the Office of Health Promotion and Disease Prevention has once again reached out to us, indicating that they wished GAO had spoken with them. Further, they renewed their commitment to working with us and to including a focus on the specific nutritional needs of older adults in the 2025 to 2030 update of the Dietary Guidelines for Americans. In the meantime, we are, quote unquote, documenting our intentions with the Office of Health Promotion and Disease Prevention and the plan for inclusion of specific nutritional needs of older Americans. Further, we are in the process of trying to hire a registered dietitian in our central office. We're really quite excited about it. A vacancy announcement was published yesterday. The link is on the slide. So if you know of anyone, please encourage them to apply. They need to do it right away because this vacancy announcement closes on Saturday, but we're looking for wonderful people who are familiar with the programs that you run at the local level and that we administer here at the federal level. Next slide. GAO's second recommendation was for our regional offices to take steps to ensure states are monitoring providers to ensure meal consistency with federal nutrition requirements. And as many of you are aware, ACL implemented a reorganization last August, which transferred the state liaison role from the regional offices to the central office. Most of the staff who previously performed those functions did not move to Washington, D.C., and we've been in the process of trying to hire and train new staff. Again, you will likely see a set of vacancy announcements for Aging Services Program Specialists, and again, we would appreciate you recommending good candidates to apply. It's important to note that the responsibility for monitoring rests with the states and area agencies when it comes to providers. And as we take steps to ensure that states are monitoring providers, we will be working with states and asking them to demonstrate to us the methods that are in place and that collectively we believe would be effective. Next slide. The third recommendation for HHS and ACL was to centralize information on promising approaches for making meal accommodations to meet the nutritional needs of older adult participants. Specifically, they recommended having this information in one location on the National Resource Center on Nutrition and Aging website. In our interactions with GAO, we informed them of a variety of means of disseminating information on promising practices, including the Resource Center website for sure, the trainings and presentations that take place at nutrition and other conferences, the technical assistance calls with states and area agencies and providers, as well as webinars like the one today, but webinars that are conducted throughout the year on various aspects of nutrition. Further, we informed them that the current Resource Center Award is in its last year and that we would be awarding a contract for a new one and would, among other things, require that centralized information on promising practices be listed so providers could easily access them. Next slide. Our approach to implementing Older Americans Act programs and to making improvements in them is to do so in collaboration with you, the network. We would not want to impose a new set of burdens on you that defeat the entire purpose by making it more difficult to achieve the goals intended. We look forward to working with NANASP, with MOA, the Defeat Malnutrition Today Coalition, and others to implement feasible approaches to monitoring and to addressing the challenges of meeting increasing demand and the varying nutritional needs of older adults. And we also must focus broadly, and I'm glad to hear that we are doing that on today's webinar, broadly beyond just the Older Americans Act programs, if we really want to begin to address the issues of malnutrition. Our program just can't do it alone. So thanks again for inviting ACL to participate on today's webinar. I look forward to your questions or comments at the end of today's presentations. Thanks.
Edwin, thank you so much for a thorough, candid, and even entertaining presentation on a topic that you care a great deal about. We all care a great deal about, and I also commend you for being a stand-up, an ACL for being stand-up enough to come and participate in this webinar. And I think that in itself is a good sign of where collaborations can occur going forward. We're going to see if Maddie's on the phone. Has Maddie joined us? Maddie Fidel, have you joined us? Okay, we'll stop when she joins us. She's with Senator Murray's office. Senator Murray was a co-requester of the GAO study. So let's take a look at sort of looking ahead from where we are from this report, and let's talk about some of the things that are relevant for Congress as well, beyond what the administration has been asked to do requested to do or recommended to do by GAO. First of all, as everyone knows, Congress needs to complete action on the reauthorization of the Older Americans Act. And as folks know, the House has passed the bill and the Senate is moving on their bill. But we're happy to say that both bills do call for first-time malnutrition screening, and both bills also call for more medically tailored meals and meals addressing cultural dietary preferences. I think that is a foresighted view on the part of Congress looking ahead to what are the varying needs of older adults in the nutrition space. And when this process is finished, and we are confident that it will be finished, and there will be a new Older Americans Act this year, we will then call on the House and the Senate to provide adequate funding and resources to ensure that the screening does occur, and maybe perhaps fund some pilot programs where a larger quantity of medically tailored meals or culturally appropriate meals can be provided, so we can see the result of these pilots or demonstrations. And some of you know, I know Edmund remembers this, that the Older Americans Act Nutrition Program that we talk about today itself grew out of a demonstration project a number of years ago. And we think now it's time to start looking at ways to modernize this program, and sometimes the best way to do it is through pilot programs. But no matter what, Congress really should be providing funding for all senior nutrition programs, both within HHS and USDA, to meet the demand for high-quality, nutritious food for a growing older adult population. We would point out, proudly that the nutrition program in the Older Americans Act has received increases in funding for each of the last 3 fiscal years through a lot of good advocacy on the ground between NANASP and Meals on Wheels America. But as Edwin pointed out, the challenge still remains to have the funding match the need. And that's something that we're all committed to trying to do, and we'll continue to do so in the fiscal year coming up. So in conclusions on our side, again, we are very, very grateful to Senators Casey and Murray for requesting the report, and for ACL for responding to the report and participating today. This report is important for a couple of reasons. Number one, it does provide a recognition of the vital issue of older adult nutrition. It clearly establishes the link between nutrition and health, and it sets out a roadmap for further action. And it also says that with improved oversight, meals that are provided with federal funds can meet more of the nutritional needs of older adults. And we know from working on a daily basis with nutrition providers, and some of us go and sit at lunch tables and talk to older adults themselves in these programs. The providers want to offer the best meals possible so that an older adult doesn't have to be hospitalized or placed in a nursing home because of poor nutrition. And way too many of older adults still are in that situation. But all of the programs that are cited in the GAO report can help maintain the independence of the older adults they serve. And we should invest more in all of them because, as we all know, the return on this investment will be sound and will be felt across the country. And we would now like to flip. Oh, Maddie?
Has Maddie joined us yet?
Maddie, are you on board yet?
She did have a meeting. It may have run long, so
okay.
I think we should move forward.
Okay, we're going to go to our resource page, and we want to point out a couple of things so that for those of you who were honest enough to say you didn't read the report, I want to start by telling you what link to go to directly to get the full GAO report.
Yep, so the GAO report is linked here. You can also get it on our website. We have linked it there at defeatmalnutrition.today. We also issued a statement on the report, and that is also linked here and on our website. Ultimately, if you're not a member of our coalition, we would really like you to be. Information on how to join as either an individual or to sign your organization up is also on our website. And that's my email address at the bottom. And then I would also point out that this webinar is being recorded and it will be available on our website as well. So along with the slides, which you can also download in the little box there where it says handouts. You can click on that and download them. So are there questions for our fantastic speakers? One has come in. Is there DMT work with the World Health Organization's Age-Friendly Cities project? There currently is not, but that sounds like a great idea. So I'm going to write it down.
Yes, and we understand the whole relationship of age-friendly, livable communities, villages, all the things that are developing around more successful aging, but obviously community-based services and programs are critical to any successful age-friendly community. So that's a good place for us to do some more work in, and we appreciate the suggestion.
Hey, Meredith, as you also answer that question with regard to the World Health Organization, perhaps even a little broader than the age-friendly cities component is the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, where they are focused on healthy living and living well. And so as we focus on defeating malnutrition, that's an initial step toward living well and living healthy.
Good point. And Samantha, any thoughts on that as well?
Oh, I second everything you guys are saying. I completely agree.
Okay, that's great.
And I would add, we are entering the decade of healthy aging. So as proclaimed by, I believe, the World Health Organization. So that's also something to keep in mind as we move forward. So one question, this one is for Edwin. Where can folks find the Determine checklist?
Actually, I think it's on the website and on the website of the Resource Center as well. I thought you had a slide up earlier, Meredith, that actually mentioned that.
Yes, the person was just wondering where they could find it since we had mentioned it. So thank you. Does anyone have any more information about increasing nutrition education as a component of programs?
Well, I'll speak to that in general terms. We have not been prescriptive with regard to that. And as I concluded my remarks today, we would first want to engage with a broad range of network representatives to talk about what is being done, what are best practices now, as opposed to prescribing a certain metric with regard to nutrition education. But again, we are very interested in collaborating with the network, not burdening the network.
I think that's a very good point, Edwin. And I think even Congress, when it established the nutrition program and called on nutrition education to be one of the elements in the nutrition program, in keeping with the nature of the Older Americans Act being a local decision program, if you will, I think the idea was to just have nutrition education provided based on, to some degree, what the providers felt their participants needed to know about. Or maybe it's the participants, seeking more information about a given topic. And my experience from visiting programs is that there are different elements to what constitutes nutrition education, but when it's provided, it is eagerly accepted by the participants in the programs. But you're right; it should not be a sort of prescribed. You can only do it this way because it may not work in all communities.
I would also agree with that. And one person pointed out as well that partnering with your local university extension office is a great way to get some nutrition counseling, nutrition screening tools, that kind of thing, and providing nutrition education.
Samantha, anything from you on this?
Yeah, I think that what I hear in Pennsylvania, and I don't know if we have any Pennsylvanians on the line, is that there are a lot of different unique ways that they're working to get education to seniors and to whether it be the senior centers or other programs where they're providing nutrition education. And I actually, Edwin, I had a question for you, and I don't know if you can answer this, but if states or AAAs need some additional help, is it appropriate for them to be reaching out to their regional office or to ACL directly with those questions?
They can still reach out to their regional offices. The regions have an individual in each of the 10 regional offices. We're still in the throes of hiring for San Francisco, but they are serving as regional ambassadors and are communicating to us here in the central office as we continue to staff up the previously known state liaison role. So yes, continue to contact your regional administrators.
Great, thank you. One question that came in: has ACL considered updating the determined checklist?
I don't know that we have in recent history, but as we hire a new nutritionist to serve as the national nutritionist for the program, it's something we can certainly look at.
Right, and actually, if and when the Older Americans Act does finish its work and it gets reauthorized, and malnutrition screening becomes something that's going forward, it'll be interesting how that connects with the determined checklist, and see whether or not more of an emphasis on the actual nutrient quality of meals can be factored in. So we would look forward to seeing how that gets done down the road.
And would participant suggest that working with local dietetic students could also be a good relationship for both the students and for nutrition education opportunities. So I think that's an important note to point out as well.
Sure. And we also have the listserv where folks could pose questions as well as suggestions for what they would want us to consider in terms of nutrition education.
That would be great. Hey, Maddie, have you joined yet? She has not. So, Edwin, how can folks access the listserv that just came in?
Why don't I get it, and then we can send it out as a link?
Okay,
Okay?
perfect. So this question is actually for Bob and for me. Senior nutrition is, I do not believe that senior nutrition is currently among the 34 leading health indicators for the Healthy People 2030 report. Are we advocating for the inclusion of senior nutrition? And the answer to that is yes. We worked on that for Healthy People 2020 as well. Unfortunately, one of the things we've been told is that they're actually reducing the number of health indicators. So, we have submitted multiple comments. I have gone in person to talk to the committee, but I don't think we're going to be successful for 2030.
But I know that there's a pretty determined amount of advocacy going on. I know the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics is very engaged in working on Healthy People 2030, and I don't know, maybe Samantha, maybe that could be a good oversight topic for for the aging committee to see how to get some more aging related indicators into Healthy People 2030, if that is going to be our model,
Great, thank you. I can send this around. The Determined checklist is also on the National Resource Center on Nutrition and Aging's website. So I can send that around to folks after the webinar is over. Someone else wanted to point out that the Society for Nutrition and Education and Behavior has a healthy aging division, and they'd like to ensure that more sessions focused on older adults are presented at their annual conference. So you can go to sneb.org for that one. So this is a good question. What steps could be taken to address the conflicting rules between USDA and the Older Americans Act rules in regard to use of USDA foods when posting full fee signs and solicitation of donations?
Say that again? I want to make sure I understand the question.
Could the person who wrote in with that, provide a little clarification there? Because I'm not sure I quite get the question either.
I kind of see pieces of the question, but I don't see the connection to everything that's there. So let's give it a second just to see if we can get a little more clarification.
So we got one comment on what happens in Northern Arizona for education. They have added it to their monitoring tool, and they used to just ask, "Do you do it?" Now they want details, when, what, etc. Plus, they have provided resources to the providers to assist them in providing quality materials to the participants. By putting it in the, this would be AAA contract and monitoring tool, they're now paying more attention to this at the local level. The person who asked the last question, they used to be able to use food from the food bank, but now can't because they use OAA dollars and have to post signs about the ability to contribute if they're 60 plus.
Edwin, can you?
I will. Yeah, that's something I have to look into. I've never heard of that. I'm not familiar with the practice or the policies that are being utilized here or mentioned here. So if I'm understanding the question correctly, they have to post Older Americans Act policies related to voluntary contributions at a USDA provided food bank?
That the Older Americans Act program is using foods from the USDA food bank. I'm not sure. So how about this person? How about you email me and I can connect you with Edwin and we can look at that in more detail.
Yeah, I mean I do know there are programs in the country that get some additional food from food banks that are connected to the Older Americans Act, but I'm not familiar with them having any restrictions in other words, the idea would be they don't have to make an additional contribution to get access to this food bank if the program is doing the outreach to the food bank. But I know this does exist out there, and it's probably a good thing to get clarified.
Yeah. So the person has further clarified that the USDA told them that they had to take the contribution signs down. Are you referring to the commodity program under the Nutrition Services Incentive Program, perchance?
This is like drama here.
I know. I'm very invested in this.
That's right. We're determined to get to the bottom of this question.
So again, can this person email me and we'll see what we can do here.
Samantha, it doesn't ring a bell with you, does it?
No, I think that's outside my knowledge. I'm sorry.
No, it seems to be outside all of us.
Okay, good. Thank you. Please email me.
Right. Okay.
All right. Let me see what other questions have come in the meantime. I think we were all invested in this, so
yeah, right.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if anything else has come in at this point.
And Maddie, have you come in at this point? Okay.
Okay.
Well, while we wait to see if there are any other questions, I'd like to give Samantha a chance to make any additional comments she might make after she heard the different presentations. Anything you want to add to what you said earlier?
No, I think that, I really appreciate everyone being on the call. It was nice to hear from Edwin and from ACL on some of the work that they're doing and their feedback on the GAO report. Anybody on this call that has ideas or suggestions, you can always reach out to Meredith and she can connect us. I'm always happy to chat with anyone around their thoughts on senior nutrition.
And let me echo that point. I know that for a fact, actually, because, Samantha's one of the more accessible and interested people on the Hill in dealing with nutrition and older adults. So I would encourage any folks to do that, especially those of you from Pennsylvania that may be on the webinar. Edwin, any additional comments or thoughts you want to throw out?
No, I don't think so. I think many of you know Carrie Lipperini, who's the director of our Office of Nutrition and Health Promotion Programs. And the question related to USDA and the contributions or voluntary contributions component, she thinks she knows what it is. And so, Meredith, if you can go on and send that to us, we'll get back to the person and try to answer the question. But we're very pleased to be a part of today's webinar.
Well, we were very pleased to have you join us and give us the perspective that you did. And we'll see if there's any more questions. And if not, we will maybe take advantage of finishing 5 minutes early. Anything else, Meredith?
No, I think that's about all. We've had some other folks pitch in on the USDA food bank, et cetera, questions. So I will attempt to connect all of you after this.
So again, we thank those of you who joined. We're very pleased at the turnout of this webinar. Well over 200 some odd people have participated, and we feel this is a good sign of interest in a very good set of programs that are run by HHS and USDA. And we look forward to working with as many of you who are interested in seeing these programs grow. We'll be looking to do some advocacy with you on the funding questions. And I guess if there's no further questions, we will sign off and say thank you all very much.
Yes, thank you so much. And also, the webinar was not pre-approved for CEU, so this has not been Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics pre-arranged to answer the final question. All right, thank you, everybody.